guys, welcome to episode 2 of Hailey's TBR, where we take a book off my shelf, dust it off, and I read it so you don't have to. I wanted to talk about a book that I actually reread recently, and it was 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott. I'll tell you, some of the best books I've ever read were young adult fiction, and I stand by that. I'm a young adult fiction girl, like that's my favorite, and that's just how it is. But everybody has their own taste, I guess. Story follows Stella, and Stella is a teenage girl with the terminal illness of cystic fibrosis, which is an illness of the lungs, mucus causing a thick membrane in the lungs, causing a lot of bacterial growth, and eventually it can be fatal to some. Most with cystic fibrosis don't live terribly long. Maybe the median is in their 30s, but people have discovered new medications and they are thriving. And in this particular story, she has actually gotten sick, so she can't go on her senior trip, so she has to stay in the hospital and go through another round of medication to make sure she stays healthy enough. And this is kind of cute because it definitely has like a John Green feel, but it's just a little bit sweeter. To continue, we see how Stella is. She is a YouTuber. She posts online about her journey with cystic fibrosis, and she's a very family-oriented girl, very friendly, very into having friends and hanging out with her friends, and she's helping them pick out outfits for their vacation that she can't go on, but she wants them to go and have fun anyway. And they're all super supportive, and they're really sad she can't go, but you know, things happen. And so yeah, that kind of happens, and she introduces herself and does her YouTube video, daily blog type thing. She's very strict about her schedule. She's on a regimen for all of her vitamins and medications, and she's a very rigid, organized girl, which I think is kind of cute. She's nerdy and sweet, and she tries to keep herself as healthy as possible, just for the possibility of a lung transplant, because that is the most effective way to treat cystic fibrosis, but it is not a permanent thing. The shelf life for that is about 5 to 7 years ish, depends on the health that you have. And so yeah, we get to know her, and you get to know her best friend Poe, and Poe is a Latino guy, and he's like the gay best friend, and he has a little trouble with the relationship department because, you know, he's also terminally ill with the same disease, so he keeps people at an arm's length. But it's really sad because the boyfriend that he has currently is like the best one, that she was really rooting for him, and he's just kind of like pushing them away. And later on you bump into Will, and Will is this 17, almost 18-year-old guy that has been bumped from hospital to hospital to hospital because he has a more aggressive type of cystic fibrosis. There is a bacteria that he contracted, and it made him super sick, essentially, and I think it's called B. cepacia. And if another patient that has cystic fibrosis catches it, it could inevitably shut down their immune system. It can kill them. Like, it's really intense, and that's kind of where the intensity of the story comes from, because people with cystic fibrosis cannot be close together. They have to be at least 6 feet apart. They cannot be touching, they cannot kiss, they cannot hug, they cannot shake hands without at least a gloved hand, a ton of sanitizer. It's a very isolating disease. Love can conquer many things, but sometimes it doesn't, and that's where a lot of people forget, because sometimes it doesn't conquer all, but we'll keep going. Stella loves children. She loves babies, and she's so excited when she sees babies, and she likes to spend a lot of time in the NICU, because women with cystic fibrosis and men with cystic fibrosis, it's almost nearly impossible to have children. Sometimes it can happen, but most of the time it ends up making that specific person infertile, and that's something that I didn't actually know until I reread the book. Will finds interest in Stella, and Stella is like, heck no, guy, you gotta stay away from me. I know you're sick, so stay away from me. But he's like, oh no, I'm gonna know who you are. I'm gonna get to know you. And he inevitably follows her into the NICU. He does keep his distance, but he gets a little too close, and then Barb, the head nurse lady, like super mom, she's like, you guys cannot be together. You guys are gonna get each other sick. You're gonna get in trouble. You need to just stay away from her. And what is he? And that's where the story gets really cute, because she tries to be like all hard to get and be all philosophical and just be like total Stonewall. And he plays essentially like a poor me card, and he goes out onto the roof across the street, because this hospital is like a really big hospital, so it's like a U shape. Okay, it's like a huge one. And she sees him from the window, and he's on the roof, and she books it all the way up to that roof to make sure he doesn't jump, because he's just over all of it. He's over being alone, he's over feeling isolated, he is just over being sick. He's turning 18 in like a month, and after that he will have the choice of not being treated anymore, because he's been treated in multiple different hospitals in multiple different countries, because his mom has got the cash. Okay, and it's one of those things where it's just like really frustrating for him, and he just feels isolated. And she makes a deal where if he follows the regimen she sets, they'll be friends. And he has to follow these regimens. They have to do them together. She wants him to get better. She wants him to feel better. She wants him to feel more accomplished. And he's just like, I'm already gonna die. There's no point. And she's like, you gotta at least try. So they don't exactly do a pinky swear, but in my brain reading this, I think they do the pinky swear, so like it's a really big deal. And they go on this entire montage of exercising together. She scrubs up, okay, and she sets up his entire med card. She goes into his room, she's in a biohazard suit, and she sets up everything for him, and she has everything written down. So they do it together. And she's really, really stinking smart. She's built a whole app on the App Store to remind people to take their medicine, to follow a schedule, to be productive, to make themselves better for themselves. And she and him sync their apps together, so they do this journey together. And it's really cute and quirky, because she's like, nah bro, I don't like you, you're just icky, like, and she's just all about it. But we all know she's got big old goo eyes for this boy, and we all know that he's just playing too cool for school, but he really likes her. And later on in the book, it's really funny, because she's talking to Poe, her best friend, and he is like, oh, you really like it, don't you? Like, it's a really big deal. And she's like, no, I can't like him. No way, it's not gonna work. But he tells her that it's one of those things where if you don't take it, you're gonna lose it, right? And she's just like, well, I'm gonna take my shot. Everything's gonna be good. Everything's gonna be great. And they go on a date. They finally go on a date, and they have to be really secret about it. So she decides to take something for herself, and the rule is 6 feet apart. But she finally says, F that, F this. She still follows all of her rules, but she finds a pool stick. And this is where it really comes into play, and you really think about it. And that's where the metaphor comes from. You take back a whole feat of separation, of isolation, and you give that to yourself. And that was a huge metaphor for their relationship. And it gave me a sense of euphoria, and it made me feel fuzzy on the inside. Like, it was just a really feel-good moment where they are holding hands, and they take both sides of the pool stick, and they walk together, and they talk, and it's just really sweet. And you get to the part where they're in the pool, and it's a very vulnerable part. It's not like super sexualized or anything, but she takes off her dress, and he sees her naked for the first time, and you see the port in her chest, and you see the scars on her abdomen, and you see her feeding tube, and you see her in a vulnerable state. And he doesn't sexualize her, he doesn't say anything rude, he's just in awe. He's in love. And he does the exact same thing, and you see all the scars, and you see the feeding tube, and you see him described as a walking skeleton, as people with cystic fibrosis are a little bit on the skinnier side. It's just a really sweet moment where you know he wants to kiss her, you know he wants to hold her, he wants to touch her, he wants to feel her, he wants to be with her, and it kills you. Like, it's just a raw and tender moment, and it's sweet. And then after this really sweet tender moment, it's late at night, and Poe texts Stella, and he warns them about Nurse Barb doing her rounds, and they run, and they try to beat her, but she's like stomping around looking for them. She knows that they're doing stuff and they're not supposed to. And they have the bright idea of Stella going into the NICU because that's where she would look first. And just by a second, they beat her, and everything is good, and Will gets back into bed, and everything is fine. And so inevitably they get busted, and they have to be separated, and that was basically Will's final straw. And that's when Barb is like, you're out, you're done, you are gonzo, and he gets assigned to a different hospital. And this is where things go south, because after this is where my heart inevitably breaks. And moments after this huge thing, we find out that Poe goes into code blue, and he goes into cardiac arrest, and he dies. And it takes a lot for me to cry, but Poe passing away after such a loving and caring moment, like, crushed my soul. And I just want you guys to experience that for yourself. Like, I am a glutton for punishment. Like, give me the sad. And I just feel like it's something that if you haven't read, you need to read. Just trust me. And after this, Stella's so angry at herself. She's so hurt because she can never touch Poe. She can never hug Poe. She could never give him a kiss on the cheek. She could never just be with him. And that's just something that broke me. It broke me, okay? And then she blames everybody for everything. She just can't deal with it. And so she decides to just say F it and go and see the lights that her sister and her planned on doing in town, and they never did because her sister inevitably died from a terrible accident. And she's all bundled up and she's ready to go, and then Will sees her because he's waiting for his taxi because he's going, and he follows her and he makes sure that she doesn't get hurt. And this is another part that hurts me. Okay, so they're walking along and they're having a good time and everything's great, and they're like scooting on the ice and they're singing and they're holding hands because they can, because they're holding gloved hands. They're fine. They're keeping arm's length, and they're goofing around and they're talking. And this is where it gets really scary because Stella ends up slipping and falling through the ice and she almost drowns. And Will inevitably gets her out of the ice and he saves her life. She's unconscious, but he gives her CPR, and this is where it gets really scary because, remember the B. cepacia, the really intense bacteria that put her at risk for getting that, and that can ruin her chances of getting the lung transplant that she obviously needs. And during this time, they find lungs that match Stella, and he's trying to get her to go back there to get those lungs because that gives her an extra 5 years of life, and Will wants her to have those lungs. And they eventually get back to the hospital, and they're talking to the nurse, and Will explains what happens, and they're still thankful for even doing that. And they inevitably get tested, and Stella is fine. She didn't contract the bacteria so far they know, and she goes through with the surgery and everything goes well. And you would think like everything's great and everything's fine, but Will actually decides that it's not right for him to stay with Stella, and this broke my soul. I'm like crying because it's so unbelievably sad. And she has all these tubes hooked up to her, and they come up with a little plan to give her one last little surprise. And when she wakes up, and he's outside her door, outside her room, and it's all glass so you can see him, and he gives her the surprise of these beautiful twinkly lights all over, and he tells her that no matter what, that he'll always love her, but they can't be together because she needs to go on and have a happy, healthier life with these new lungs and breathe fresh air and do good things. Whereas Will is on the lesser half of his life, and he's just gonna deteriorate and inevitably die. And Stella probably will too at some point, but she's got a little bit of a better chance. And he tells her that he loves her no matter what, and he will never forget her, and he admits that she is the love of his life, and she can't say anything. She's all tubed up, and it's just something that I'll never forget, because again, bawling, sobbing, drenching my book in tears because this is beautifully written. He says goodbye. It's one of those things where it's just like, just because you're in love doesn't mean you are allowed to stay together. It doesn't mean you have to stay together. It doesn't mean that things are going to be okay in the end. And it's a lot. And it really makes me think, because there's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of people that have diseases that prevent them to have the love that they want and that they need and that they crave for. And it's real. It's real. And that's just something that wigs me out, and I will forever recommend this book. And there's a little bonus chapter at the end, and it's a year later. I think it's like 10 months to a year later, and Stella and her friends are traveling in the airport, and they're getting ready to go somewhere, and Will is going to Germany, I believe, or Amsterdam, somewhere in Europe, and he doesn't think anything about it, and he's watching Stella's videos from afar, and he still thinks about her every day, and he loves her just as much as he did that last night that he saw her. And he pauses the video on his phone, and he stops, and he hears something, and he turns around, and it's Stella's voice, and he's looking, and then he finally sees her, and they meet eyes, and they get a little bit closer, but not close enough, and they're 5 feet apart, and they get all teary-eyed, and they say, "Will, Stella." It's, oh my god, that's probably one of the best extra chapters I've read in a book in forever, and this book came out like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, and it's timeless. Like, I will forever love how this book turned out, because no matter where they go, who they are as people, they will never forget what they did for each other. Stella helping Will realize that it's okay to take care of yourself, and it's okay to be sick and not be negative about it. It's okay to just to breathe. Breathe. And Will shows Stella to just let go and be free and to live life to the fullest. And I feel like they were the perfect match for each other, and it's just the right person, wrong time type of thing. And I strongly recommend this book. This was definitely a 4.5 out of 5 bookmarks, and any of Rachel Lippincott's novels have sincerely left impacts on my heart, and this one for sure. I really hope you guys enjoyed this second installment of Hailey's TBR, and we'll see you next time.